Matter number 8, Senator Siewert.
I seek leave to take note of matter number 8, the Australian Human Rights Commission report number 80, which is an inquiry into a complaint of KA, KB, KC and KD versus Commonwealth of Australia.
Okay, you don't need leave, Senator Siewert.
I take note of this document. This is an extremely important report. This relates to 4 Aboriginal men who have a cognitive impairment that have been held in custody, indeterminate custody. This issue is an extremely important issue, and we have seen recently with the very sad case of Roseanne Fulton in Western Australia, who had been held in, she had a cognitive impairment, been held in detention in Western Australia for a significant period of time before she was transferred to the Northern Territory, and we've just seen on the news how that is still resulting in interactions with the law and insufficient accommodation. This report doesn't actually relate to Roseanne, but it does relate to 4 other men who have now complained to the Australian Human Rights Commission. And I should note that at the time this was tabled, there was also a report tabled by the Attorney General for Australia, Senator George Brandis, who unfortunately, in tabling this report, is basically washing his hands of this matter and says it's not a Commonwealth responsibility. Well, that's not the thoughts of the Human Rights Commission, who go through very detailed consideration of the circumstances of these men and find, I'll take you to the finding because I've only got a short amount of time. They find as a result of this inquiry, there has been a failure by the Commonwealth to take measures to work with the Northern Territory to provide accommodation and other support services other than accommodation in a maximum security prison for people with intellectual disabilities who are unfit to plead for criminal charges. In other words, these people that have a cognitive impairment and they are not fit to plead, they should not be held in prison because they have not been found guilty of any crime. What this report is saying is the Commonwealth has failed to take measures to ensure, or to work with the Northern Territory to ensure that accommodation has been provided. The report goes through and makes some recommendations around the individuals in terms of what the Commonwealth and the Territory should be doing in terms of they're saying that the Commonwealth should provide a copy of the Commission's findings to the Northern Territory and seek assurances from the Northern Territory that it will take immediate steps to identify alternative accommodation arrangements for each of the complainants so that Mr K.A. and Mr K.D. are no longer detained in prison and Mr K.B. and Mr K.C. are progressively moved out of held detention. This is really clear. This is really clear that alternative accommodation needs to be found, and it is outrageous that the Commonwealth Government is washing its hands of any responsibility. And this has been the Commonwealth's response every time we have asked them to start paying attention and working on the issues around Australia, because this is not just occurring in the Northern Territory, it's occurring in all states where people with cognitive impairments that have interactions with the justice system are put indeterminately in prison. And that is simply not acceptable, and it's quite plain it's breaching our international obligations under a number of conventions, including the rights of people with disabilities. The Commonwealth Government can simply not wash its hands of this issue. The people of Australia expect the Commonwealth to take responsibility for all its citizens and not brush it off by saying this is a responsibility of the Northern Territory. It's about time that the Commonwealth took responsibility for this issue, worked not just with the Northern Territory, although that is obviously the most immediate issue that needs to be dealt with, so that these 4 Aboriginal men are no longer held in detention, but also working with the other states to ensure that there are other accommodation available for people that have a cognitive impairment, so that they're not held in indeterminate detention. People have been held, in the case in Western Australia as an example, where people have been held for over 10 years without charge. That is simply not good enough. It is a clear breach of our international obligations. This report needs to be reconsidered by the government. They simply need to be very quickly taking on board these issues. It is unacceptable that they wash their hands. This is the way they treat very thought-through reports on these 4 gentlemen. They need to be reconsidering this report and ensure they take action so that people are no longer held for indeterminate periods of time simply because they have a cognitive impairment and are unfit to plead.
Thank you, Senator Siewert.